Happy Wednesday! Guys, we're halfway through the week. We're going to start looking at ancient Egypt. So the Egyptians were creating art. Their civilization was a little bit before the Mayans, but I chose to go globally rather than in a timeline so that we weren't hopping back and forth. So keep that in mind, that Egyptians were building their pyramids and things before the Mayans. Not a ton before. About 500 to 1,000 years earlier. They were building their pyramids and kind of their civilization was starting. But there are some really fascinating things about Egypt and ancient Egyptian art. And we're going to spend a couple of days on it because there are so many things to it. One, the very first actual portraits of specific people were done by the ancient Egyptians, the first ones that we know about. Which is that's an interesting thing. Before this, the cave paintings and things like that we were looking at, it was just silhouettes, or it wasn't anybody specific, or at least nobody that we knew of. However, the ancient Egyptians did keep records. They had kings, or pharaohs were their kings. And they kept a lot of records about that. They carved them, they painted them, they used precious metals like gold to like sculpt with and create their artwork with. And they used multiple perspectives and things like that. There's a short little video in the slides I want you to watch that kind of breaks some of those things down, because we're going to be using that tomorrow when we go a little bit more in depth with the ancient Egyptian artwork. And then there's just a couple of things that I want you to think about. One is there are similarities between ancient Egypt and the Mayan civilizations, the two that we've looked at so far, in that they both built pyramid-style structures. They looked very different. Obviously, they had different stones in Central America versus Northeast Africa. However, the general shape is similar. Now, is that a coincidence? These are two very different cultures in two very different places of the world in a time when they weren't traveling across the oceans. So people weren't trading back and forth that far away. So how did the Mayans, were the Mayans watching? How were they able to even know what the Egyptians were doing? So is it a coincidence that they both built pyramids, or do you think there's another kind of explanation? I just want you to think about it. What are your thoughts on that? So be thinking about that for tomorrow. And Africa is such a large continent, and it has many countries within that. Each one has its own unique cultures, music, artwork, art styles. But do you think that the Egyptians influenced other arts of other cultures across that continent of Africa, or not? What do you think? What are your thoughts? Later in this 9 weeks, we will look at some other art forms across Africa, the continent, and we'll look at multiple countries. I just want you to think about that, because that's coming down the line in a few weeks. Thank you for watching the video. Thank you for watching the other video that's in there. I want you to send me an email and tell me one thing you learned about the video that's on the slides, that's in the slides for you to watch. Send me an email, tell me one thing you learned about that video, from that video, and that's extra credit. And have a great Wednesday, and I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow you'll have something to turn in.